Welcome back to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Russell Bohling, who was an Englishman, and he disappeared from the UK, you know what I mean, and he went missing back in 2010. This case has a lot of interesting details connected to it. Details are ranging from really kind of weird, pornographic artwork left by a, Satanist sect or cult, I would say, back in the 70s in an RAF bunker. The main victim's father getting caught with quite a bit of, CP, child porn, and I'm not gonna even finish that because I'm gonna get demonetized. So the father, has some CP on his computer, and there's a weird thing happening right there, and a lot of money potentially getting inherited by the main victim right before he goes missing. I mean, we're gonna jump into all of this. Now, I want to present to you the overview of this case before we jump into the further details here. Alright, so Russell Bohling, he is an Englishman, and he disappeared from West Ella in East Riding of Yorkshire in England on Tuesday, the 2nd of March in 2010, so it's been like 12 years from now. He was 18 at the time of his disappearance. He was standing essentially at 5 foot and 8 inches. Some additional characteristics about Russell Bohling is that he had short, straight brown hair. He had a medium build. He also had a interesting speech and language disorder. Apparently, he would say yes even if he meant to say no. So, for example, if someone would ask him, "How are you, Russell? Are you okay?" And even if he wasn't okay, he would kind of say yes. It's a pretty weird disorder, but it kind of connects to one of the theories I will be talking about a bit later on. Now, at the day when he disappeared, on the 2nd of March back in 2010, he was kind of dressed more sharply than he would usually dress up for a casual Tuesday. Now, he was wearing a black Ben Sherman jacket, blue jeans, and black leather trainers. He had also taken brown steel-capped boots with him. He was not wearing them, he just took them, and I guess it will make more sense as we progress in this timeline, or let's say overview of this case. Russell was born on December 29th in 1991 to parents Christine and Roger Bohling. Roger, he's gonna play a bit of a role in this case, and you'll see why. At the time of his disappearance, Russell was attending Bishop Burton College in Beverly, where he was studying bricklaying. I kinda peeped this college a little bit, the Bishop Burton College in Beverly. It's some sort of a handyman's college where people actually go to do that good work, learn farming and like useful skills, actually going in there doing blue collar work. And Russell, the main victim in this case, he was studying bricklaying. On the morning of the 2nd of March 2010, when Russell vanished, this was a Tuesday, he left his family home at West Ella to attend Bishop Burton College. Now, this college is around 20 miles away from his home in West Ella. It's actually unknown if he attended college that day, but his Renault Clio was found 45 miles away at Bempton Cliffs, near to a former RAF Royal Air Force bunker at Bempton on the East Yorkshire coast. Okay, so let's take a look at what's actually happening here. Bempton Cliffs, where his Renault Clio was found, is some sort of a bird non-profit charity preservation location where they kind of preserve birds, right? And people would usually go there, I think, for bird watching, something like that. And you can that facility kind of has a parking lot. So his car was found in the parking lot, and someone had paid for a full days of parking at Bempton Cliffs at that location where his car was found at let me see, 11:30 a.m. This is interesting because this location, and let me check the map really quickly. I feel like this location is only an hour's drive away from his home, but let me make sure that's the case. Yes, it's around 35 miles away, and it's around an hour's drive away. Now, he left his home at 8 a.m. If he went straight to Bampton Cliffs, then he would have ended up in that location at 9 a.m. in the morning, but he ended up there at 11:30 a.m. in the morning, so we know for a fact there is at least 1 hour and 30 minutes when, Russell is unaccounted for. Okay, sorry, I'm retarded. The math actually equals to 2 hours and 30 minutes for him to be unaccounted for. Law enforcement also came out and, after questioning his colleagues at the college and questioning his teachers and everyone connected to him in the college, they didn't really recover any useful information. Apparently, no one has seen him at the college that morning. However, there is CCTV footage of a car similar to Russell's entering the car park at the college, but there is no definitive proof that that was actually Russell. Now, he was unaccounted for at least 2.5 hours that morning, so he could have likely just driven to the college and then driven out, or hanged around the college for a little bit, and then proceeded to drive to Bampton Cliffs, where his car was found abandoned later on. The first person to note Russell's abandoned car was an RSPB worker. RSPB stands for Royal Society for Protection of Birds. So this is where, the Bampton Cliffs organization, this is connected to the Bampton Cliffs bird preservation situation. So this employee from this Bampton Cliffs area, they actually noted the car for the first time at 5 p.m. on the 2nd of March. Now, at that point, the car has been probably standing around there for 5.5 hours, because let's remember, it first appeared there at 11:30 a.m. and was now spotted by this employee at 5 p.m. on the same day. The interesting thing here is that this car was actually spotted by the same employee the following morning, meaning that it was left there for the entire night until March 3rd, you know what I mean? And then the employee kind of noted that there was a paid ticket for a full days of parking, paid for the 2nd of March, probably not for the 3rd of March. Now, there aren't any, let's say, content online on how the whole escalation began, how the family kind of, started worrying about Russell's whereabouts, but from what I've been able to gather, I think on the same day, on March 2nd, in the evening, when Russell had not returned back from college, the family got very worried and they kind of called it the cops. And so I don't think it took very long to put 2 and 2 together, and his car was identified as the one abandoned at the Bampton Cliffs area. Also, there are conflicting reports coming from law enforcement and the coroner. I'm not really sure what's happening here, because at first, police have strongly suspected that Russell had killed himself due to the location of his car. Bampton Cliffs is actually a known suicide spot. It's basically these massive cliffs that you could pretty much jump into the ocean. So at first they kind of were thinking he probably committed suicide. Later on, the coroner will say that he doesn't believe that it was a suicide. It was probably an accident that had taken place. But let's look at some further detail. In the initial search of the area, the former RAF bunker that was adjacent to Bampton Cliffs bird preservation location was checked for a living human only. And this was something that Russell's family would go to criticize. What does this mean? Searched for living human only? Well, they searched with heat sensing cameras, and Now, the reason why they had to use heat sensing cameras on this RAF bunker that was adjacent to the Bempton Cliffs area is because the bunker itself has been shut closed because it was not operational anymore. It's a privately owned property, but it's undeveloped, and due to trespassers, they wanted to shut off, the bunker from people from the public entering the bunker itself. And they searched the bunker with these heat sensing cameras. Now, if Russell was already dead, then they wouldn't have picked up his heat signals. So the family had criticized this move by law enforcement. The reason why they focused on this particular location is because this is basically the most interesting object around the Bempton Cliff area, and also since it's been shut off, the only way to kind of go closer to the RAF Bempton bunker is by parking essentially your car at Bempton Cliffs and kind of moving towards it from the Bempton Cliffs areas. Also, it's known that Russell had information about Bempton Cliffs, and in particular about the, let's put it, erotic pornographic artwork that has been left in the hallways in Bempton Cliffs, in RAF Bempton bunker. Sorry for confusing you guys there. Now, this RAF bunker, it's been used in the Second World War, but after the war, it was no longer in use because there was no need for it to be in use. But in the 70s, there was a Satanist cult that had basically performed some rituals inside of the bunker, and they left artwork, and this artwork kind of depicts erotic behavior from like she-males and all kinds of fruity stuff. Now, I'm not going to be showing these on the YouTube, of course, because I would be flagged and probably even removed from YouTube, but you could easily find this if you just Google RAF Bempton graffiti, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I just quickly want to expand on the search effort. Searchers undertook their first search using heat-sensitive cameras and then torches, so I think they did went inside. Now, this would be inefficient if Russell Bohling was dead at that point, obviously, because a dead person does not produce any heat anymore. Now, Russell's family were concerned that if their son's remains were inside, they could have been potentially missed by the searchers, and as a result, they actually paid 1.2 thousand, so £1,200, to have the bunker unsealed and searched in December of 2012. This was happening this was happening essentially 2 years after Russell had already vanished. Now, during this search, firefighters searched the bunker, but they did it as a training exercise, and Russell's family was present at a briefing where they remained for the duration of the 3-hour search. No evidence was recovered through this as well, so from what I'm gathering, this location was searched in the immediate aftermath of Russell's disappearance, and then once more back in 2012, over 2 years later, by firefighters. Searches were also undertaken on land around the bunker and around Bempton Cliffs, which once again is a known suicide spot. The Coast Guard was searching the sea and from the air as well. Now, Russell's family later started court proceedings regarding the thoroughness of the search. However, this case was thrown out by the judge. And then I would say lastly, the searches have also been taken place in Ravenscar. Now, Ravenscar is this small coastal village. It's around 27 miles north from Bempton Cliffs, and this is a village where, Russell's family had a holiday home This holiday home in Ravenscar will once again play a bit of a role in this case when we kind of discuss the theories later on, but it's essentially all you guys need to know at this point is that this location is 53 minutes away on car in the northern direction from Bempton Cliffs. How does this holiday home connect to this story? Well, 2 years after Russell's disappearance, his family found his best pair of training shoes, basically sports sneakers, at that holiday home. And the family is convinced that Russell was wearing that exact pair of shoes when he disappeared. This would indicate that Russell was at the holiday home sometime after his disappearance and had subsequently left his shoes in the holiday home. Police were eager to determine what Russell Bohling's movements were 3 days before his disappearance on February 27th, which was a Saturday, so the Saturday before he vanished. Now, apparently, Russell had left home and returned without informing anyone of where he had been or what he had done 3 days before his disappearance. Investigations later established that he had actually visited York, Bradford, and Bridlington on the same day, on that Saturday, but there was no indication of why he actually did this. Now, when I looked at the Google Maps, the round trip across all of these cities and then back to West Ella, it's over 4 hours of driving. So it's a whole day of driving, and to this day, no one knows why 3 days before he vanished, he made this drive. More interesting details came out of this case when it was determined that Russell had logged onto an RAF Bempton website at 7:30 a.m. on the morning that he disappeared, and he had also looked at a web page about Ravenscar, the coastal town where the family owned a holiday home, and he was doing these Google searches just 30 minutes before leaving for college. This is why we believe that he had intentions of visiting RAF Bempton bunker. The details are a bit shaky on how we know this, but Russell's father also indicated that his son had been interested in the erotic and satanic artwork that had been left on the bunker's walls by a cult in the 1970s, well after the bunker had been closed. Apparently, Russell had kept this information regarding those satanic and sexual artworks and drawings on a USB stick, which did not match that of his computer and those at his college. This particular USB stick was never found during the searches. It makes me wonder, how do we even know it was a USB stick, and how does the father know about this information? But apparently somehow they all know this, so I believe this is just a little detail that has not really been fully fleshed out online, but probably it makes sense. Russell's family insists that a third party was involved in the disappearance because, according to his parents, he only had 3.8 liters of fuel in his car, which would not have been enough to drive to Bempton Cliffs without stopping. The family recreated the journey that Russell undertook after his car was refueled on the 1st of March and determined that the car ran out of fuel at Brandesburton, which is a town 20 miles short of Bempton. Russell's debit card had not been used and he had very little cash on him, which the family claims is indicative of someone else being with Russell, most likely paying for the gas when he drove to Bempton. I scoured the Reddit posts regarding this case, and a lot of people in the Reddit comments are very weirded out. How the hell does the family know that Russell's car had 3.8 liters of fuel? Isn't that a little bit too detailed? How the hell do you know the exact amount of fuel in the car? But actually, I think also this is not explained in the Wikipedia, but I found a comment made by Russell's mother on one of the news posts, and she actually kind of clarifies the situation a little bit. So essentially what's happening is that Russell's mother and Russell actually filled up the gas tank fully the day prior to his disappearance on Monday, March 1st. And now when the car was found, actually Russell's parents asked law enforcement to investigate how much gas was actually missing from the tank, because, that's one of the ways you can find out how much gas was used. Let's imagine that when Russell set out on this trip at 8 a.m. on August 2nd, the car's fuel tank was full. It was fully fueled. So if we would estimate how much fuel was missing when it was found at Bampton Cliffs, we would know how much fuel would have been used. So this is how it was determined that 3.8 liters of fuel was actually missing from that car. Now, the family claims that 3.8 liters would have not been enough to cover the distance from West Ella, his home, to Bampton Cliffs. So they argue that Russell was with someone else who most likely paid for gas and kind of refueled a little bit, because if this had not happened, more than 3.8 liters would be missing from the fully fueled tank, if that makes any sense. It's worth mentioning that Russell came from an affluent family, and apparently his father had quite a bit of money because he offered £300,000 to Russell in order for him to buy a house and start a business, I believe. Now, it's a little bit shaky, the details regarding this payment of $300,000, not dollars, but pounds, that Russell's father was about to give to Russell, because some sources claim that this offer was made to Russell for this large chunk of money just 3 days before he vanished. Now, it's interesting because 3 days before he vanished, we know that he actually went on that really long drive, 4+ hour drive. So are these two things connected? Or, even if this timeline even correct? That's what I'm asking in the back of my head. But the family kind of maintains that this money, or just the fact that Russell came from an affluent family, kind of could potentially connect to why he disappeared. Maybe someone wanted to profit from Russell. And also, as we know, Russell had a speech disorder where he would usually reply yes, even if he would want to say no. So that made Russell vulnerable, according to his parents. On top of all of these details, the police also think that Russell Bohling potentially killed himself because of a videotape. Some sources claim that this is actually an audio tape, so we can't really say for certain, but there's some sort of a content tape that has been found by law enforcement, and on that tape, Russell is imitating a suicide. So he had recorded himself imitating a suicide. Now, the family was very eager to point out that this videotape is from 3 years ago when Russell was 15, and apparently at that point in time, Russell was quite anxious about his exams in high school, I believe. And also, the latest inquest into this case in 2009 made by coroner Mr. Rosenberg, and this is his quote: "I believe Russell did die at Bampton, probably in the sea on March 2nd, 2010. In relation to suicide, I am satisfied on the balance of probabilities he did not take his own life. Russell was enjoying the best part of his life at the time he disappeared. I do not think he had sufficient intent to take his own life. So we can see that the coroner in the latest inquest believes that most likely Russell died due to an accident, not a suicide. When the possessions that Russell had taken with him in his Renault Clio on the day when he disappeared were checked and investigated by his family members, it was discovered that his brown steel-capped boots were actually missing. So it seems like he had taken those boots with him to his car and then had, for some reason, left the car at Bampton Cliffs parking lot area and had taken those boots with him. Why would he take steel-capped boots? Maybe to investigate the RAF bunker, potentially? What do you guys think? And then on top of all of this, human feet were actually found on the banks of the Humber estuary in August of the same year. Well, 2 feet were found. One was found in August and the other one was found in September. Now, the second feet was actually a human foot encased in a brown steel-capped boot, kind of similar to the same boots that Russell had taken with him. But after an extensive investigation, it was found that that particular foot was not connected to Russell's disappearance, meaning that that foot did not belong to Russell. Now, I've seen some misinformation online. I've seen some YouTube videos that claim that this boot actually, washed up pretty close to Bampton Cliffs area. It's actually not, because the Humber estuary is actually pretty close to West Ella. It's not close to Bampton Cliffs, but we can probably, imagine if there was a strong current, maybe if this was Russell's foot, maybe it could have been, pushed down, I guess in the southern direction of the sea, pushed towards the Humber estuary, but officers claimed that this was not Russell's foot. Now, Russell Bohling's father, Roger Bohling, was subsequently convicted of possessing CP, child P, you know what I mean, when police searched the computer he had given to them in the unsuccessful hope it might reveal clues to his son's whereabouts. Over 400 images on his computer of children in their underwear posing erotically were uncovered, and 3 pictures of extreme pornography depicting adults engaging in bestiality. Rogers said he had obtained these images from an unknown relative's computer, which he had downloaded onto a memory stick before transferring them to his own computer. Oh man, what is happening here? So this guy gives the computer, which he gave this computer voluntarily. He knew he had CP on the computer, and he gave it to the cops in order to help find Russell. Wouldn't you want to clear out all of the CP on that computer? Also, maybe there's a situation where law enforcement was able to kind of restore already deleted files, and that's how they found out about the CP. In 2019, an inquest into Russell's disappearance had actually ruled that he had died at sea, but it was unclear how this came about. Now, suicide was ruled out as the manner of death, but no more conclusive judgments were provided. His family was finally happy that the inquest had provided them some sort of a closure, but they were also disappointed at the same time because an actual investigation into Russell's death is now highly unlikely. So Russell's father, Roger Bohling, the same guy who had the CP on his computer, he commented about this whole ordeal with the inquest. His comments were, he wasn't seen, nobody saw him, so there's no reason to believe he was ever on the cliff top. I believe he could have gone into the bunker at Bampton and had a massive asthma attack. He followed up with, I do not understand why Russell should choose to take himself off on a Tuesday for a trip out in the car. Why would he change his routine when he is a person of routine? It's totally out of character to miss college for him. I believe he had a secret friend, and it as this person who persuaded him to change his routine that day, we as the family still firmly believe there was a third-party involvement in Russell's death. Okay, so let's investigate the timeline. And the timeline begins in 2010, February 28th. It was a Saturday. It was 3 days before Russell had disappeared. Russell Bohling left his home and returned without informing anyone of where he had been. It was later established that he had visited York, Bradford, and Bridlington. March 2nd, which was a Tuesday, and it was the same day when Russell disappeared at 7:30 a.m. in the morning, Russell Bohling logged into the RAF Bampton website, as well as a website about Ravenscar. Let's remember that Ravenscar is where the family's holiday home is located at. Now, 30 minutes later after that, at 8 a.m., Russell actually left his home in West Ella, and he was supposed to drive to Bishop Burton College and then return home once the classes were done. However, he hasn't been seen since and hasn't returned on that day. Now, 3 hours and 30 minutes later, a parking ticket was bought for the full day of parking at Bampton Cliffs and placed in Russell's car. Now, this location is around 45 minutes away from his home, and as previously mentioned, we already estimated that, for Russell to get to this place, he still would have had 2.5 hours where he wasn't accounted for. Now, later on in the evening at 5 p.m., a worker at Bampton Cliffs notices Russell's car is still parked there and hasn't moved. In the evening on the same day, Russell's parents reported him missing to law enforcement. The next day, on March 3rd in the morning, the same Bampton Cliffs employee noticed that Russell's car is still parked in the same place and it has not been moved. And also a huge search was undertaken involving mounted police, underwater search units, the Coast Guard, and a search and rescue helicopter. Now, 5 to 6 months later, in August and September of the same year, human feet were found on the banks of the Humber estuary. It was found that the feet were not connected to Russell's disappearance. And let's move forward a couple of years into the future. In 2012, in December, 5 firefighters actually went back and searched RAF Bampton, but they didn't find Russell's remains. Okay guys, so this is what we know about Russell Bohling's disappearance. 3 days before his disappearance, Russell left home and visited York, Bradford, and Bridlington. The drive alone for this trip lasted over 4 hours, and Russell had to drive around 180 miles in total. Russell had looked up RAF Bampton as well as the village of Ravenscar online in the morning leading up to his disappearance. Russell Bohling left his home at 8 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday, March 2nd, and did not return home. It's unclear if Russell had gone to the college on the day when he disappeared. However, a car similar to Russell's was captured on CCTV entering the college parking lot. Russell was dressed smarter than he would usually dress for college. He had also taken a brown steel cap boots with him, but he didn't wear them. His car was found around 35 miles away from his home in West Ella at Bampton Cliffs, which is right next to RAF Bampton Bunker. Someone had paid for the full day of parking at Bampton Cliffs for Russell's car at 11:30 a.m. on the same day that he disappeared. Russell's debit card had not been used ever since. He was said to have very little cash on him. Law enforcement did not collect CCTV footage from the gas stations along the way from West Ella to Bampton Cliffs. Russell had a memory stick with information about the erotic and satanic artwork at RAF Bampton Bunker. This bunker had been the base of a satanic cult in the 1970s. The memory stick has not been found. According to Russell's brother, he was probably going to see the bunker which had been sealed shut in the 90s, as he had no interest in the cliffs. Law enforcement is interested in Russell's movements on the 28th of February, 3 days before his disappearance. Russell left in his car and returned home without letting his parents know where he had been. It was later established that he had visited York, Bradford, and Bridlington, but no indication of why or what he did there just 3 days prior to disappearing. Russell suffered from learning difficulties, dyslexia, and he had the language disorder. Russell's family claims that he was a creature of habit and insisted that him missing college just to go on a random trip to Bampton Cliffs was totally out of character for him. Russell was set to receive a £300,000 payment from his father to start a business and or buy a house. 3 years prior to his disappearance, when he was 15, Russell had recorded a video or audio tape imitating suicide. Russell's father was convicted of possessing CP. He claims to have obtained the images from an unknown relative's computer. Alright, so given all of this information, I would say it's pretty difficult to really establish what has happened here. I would still be leaning towards a suicide in this case. I feel like the fact that he had driven around for over 4 hours just the Saturday prior to his disappearance kinda is indicative of someone who is depressed and wants to get away for a while. That kinda makes a bit of sense to me. The fact that he was dressed a lot more sharply, as well as him googling and researching RAF Bampton bunker right before leaving, clearly indicates to me that he had intentions in the morning to go somewhere else, and he actually did. He drove to RAF Bampton Cliffs. I'm not really sure if he was alone or not, but I do believe that whomever was driving the car did in fact pay for the full days of parking at Bampton Cliffs parking area, and then Russell alone or with somebody else actually did go and investigate RAF Bampton bunker. The bunker itself is a bit of a mystery to me. I've tried to research this as much as possible, and I had watched YouTube videos of urban explorers actually venturing down into the bunker. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of dangerous areas where Russell could have passed away in, or at least areas where, law enforcement couldn't find his dead body in, and the whole bunker was apparently sealed shut. So how the hell could have Russell even ventured inside of those? So I'm still leaning towards that Russell actually didn't die in the RAF Bampton bunker. And to conclude, I will say that I'm going along with what the inquest found in this case. I do believe that if I had to bet, I would say that Russell probably died somewhere at sea. The big mystery is, was it an accident or was it a suicide? Did, he slip and fall off the massive cliffs at Bampton, or did he commit suicide? And I think both are quite, possible scenarios. So that's where I'm gonna leave it at. I think that, the boots and the shoes found inside of the, holiday home 2 years later, those kind of things, I think it's probably just red herrings in this case. I will say that I believe that Russell unfortunately has died in the sea. But leave your thoughts about this case, and I can't wait to see you on another episode, guys. Stay safe and peace out.